Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf 9, Masechet Moed Katan. Friends, who could tell me what Daf 9 talks about? Daf 9, first of all, somebody's making a lot of noise over here. I don't know what they're doing. Either they're baking a cake or they're doing some construction work or something. I don't know. We start off by talking about Ein Marvin Simcha B'Simcha, which is a very interesting thing that we discussed at the end of the daf yesterday. And then we get into all this interesting agaritas and random stuff. So, friends, let's do this. We're going to start in daf tes, about 5 lines into the page. In daf tes with Ein Marvin Simcha B'Simcha Min Olod. How do we know that we do not mix together different types of simchas, different types of happinesses, of joyousnesses? Right, because we said that, for example, you don't get married on Chol Moed because you don't want to, you want to give space to each happiness. So how do we know this? So the pasuk says by Shlomo HaMelech when he made the Chanukah Sabayis, the inauguration of the temple, Shlomo Beisahi es Echog. So Shlomo made at that time Sukkos, V'cho Yisrael Imo, and all of the Yidden were there. Kol Gadol, a big oilam, a big crowd. Milvochamas ad Nachum Mitzrayim, from the Vochamas until Nachum Mitzrayim. Lifnei Hashem Elokeinu, before God, Hashem our God. Shivas Yomim v'Shivas Yomim Arba Asar Yom. 7 days plus 7 days, total of 14 days. Meaning that Sukkos was 7 days, and the Chanukas Habayis was the 7 days prior to Sukkos. I.e., he didn't make a, as we like to say from my grandfather, a moija. He didn't make a moija. I think that came from the fact that one time he said he wasn't a sploija. So then I think one of my brothers made a joke that when he drives, he's also not a moija. Akoponim. So if we could mention the moija over here. So driving with my grandfather was a whole different sugya. That was something I won't forget. Oh my goodness gracious. That was something I won't forget. Yeah, my grandfather once drove me over the bridge, probably about, I'm at 34, so maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago, let's say. Drove me over the George Washington Bridge. Gets on the highway, completely cuts somebody off. The guy slams on his brakes, honks him, goes around him, gives him the finger. My grandmother asks, hey, what happened? He says, he did the finger. Oh, what do you want me to tell you? That was a funny ride. Oh my gosh. Uncle Ponim, I made it in one piece. The chiddush is that he made it in one piece. Alright. Okay, he did the finger. Alright. Shivas Yom, I guess he wasn't Moijin over there. No, yeah, Lamaisa, he wasn't a very good Moijin over there. Alright, Shivas Yom, Abba Yom. So, Shlomo HaMelech didn't make a Moijin. He didn't say, well, why don't we just feed 2 birds with 1 seed? We'll have the Chanukah Sabayis while everybody's already there for Sukkot. He didn't do that. He kept them separate. So it must be a Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha. If the Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha, Ibai Le Leminter Ad Echog. If we can make a moija, if we can have both simchas, right, the happiness of the festival plus the happiness of the Chanukah's Abayis, so in Ibai Le Leminter Ad Echog, he should have just waited until Sukkot. So maybe Shiva Le'achol and just, fed 2 birds with 1 seed. Have the 7 days for Sukkot, Mimele, and also Chaparayin, and have the 7 days for the inauguration of the temple. So from the fact that he didn't do that, and he had 7 days of inauguration and 7 days of Sukkot following, so Mimele, you must keep them separate. V'dilmu minter lunatrinon v'chedisamir of dinon. Perfect Gemara. Well, maybe look. The temple, the construction of the temple was complete 7 days before Sukkot. So because the construction of the temple was complete, so we weren't going to delay the Chanukah's Abayis. We weren't going to delay it. So that's why we did it 7 days beforehand. But, in the event where it just kind of falls out that way, so then it's okay. Meaning, if the construction of the temple would have fallen out as such that it would have been completed on Sukkot, so then you would have been able to have the Chanukah Sabayis on Sukkot, and therefore by extension, if it just so happens to be that a person wants to get married on the festival, so he might be able to. So Ibayle Shayure Porta. So then the Gemara says no, because if that was the case, then Shlomo Melech could have just left over a little bit, waited until the festival, and fed 2 birds with 1 seed. So for the Gemara, Shayure Binyan Beis Amikdash Lo Misharin. But we say you can't do that because we're not just going to leave over part of the building of the temple. Then the Gemara says, yeah, but what if he just would have left off, on the roof where they have needles and nails and stuff so that the ravens don't sit there. So maybe he could have just left that out and then completed that on the festival. And then they could have fed 2 birds with 1 seed and had Sukkos and the Chanukas Abayis. So Alma Kalya Orev Tzorich Binyan Abayisu, to which the Gemara says, you can't just leave out this Alma Kalya Orev, this thing for the birds, because that's part of the temple. And if you can't delay sort of the completion of the temple, then you can't delay that either. Selemi the Miyaser Kra. So what's going on? We're trying to figure out how do we know Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha. Because after all, maybe the only reason why Shlomo HaMelech did the Chanukas Abayis separate from the festival, maybe it was just because the construction of the temple was complete 7 days prior to Sukkot, so that's when they had the Chanukas Abayis. But if it would have fallen out that the temple construction was complete on Sukkot, so maybe you could have had the Chanukas Abayis on Sukkot and fed 2 birds with 1 seed. But so the Gemara says no. From the fact that the pasuk sort of is extra, which we'll explain in a second, that's how we know that you can't be ma'arvin simcha b'simcha, because michdei, let's see, siv arba asar yom shivasam v'shivasam lamali. If the pasuk already says that it was a total of 14 days, how come it also says that it was 7 days plus 7 days? So shmamina hani l'chud v'hani l'chud. So rather it must be that they are necessarily separate. That you have to first have the 7 days of the Chanukas Abayis followed by the 7 days of Sukkot, because you can't have them together. That's why it says, even though it says 14 days, it also says 7 plus 7 to say that you necessarily need both, because you cannot moed them. You cannot make a moed. Okay, fine. Amr Parnach, Amr Yochanan, says Reb Parnach, the name of Reb Yochanan, Osashana lo asu Yisrael es Yom HaKippurim. Now that year, the Yidden, they didn't do Yom Kippur. Because if, Sukkot is the 15th day of Tishrei, and we're saying that for the 7 days prior to Sukkot, they were busy with the Chanukas Abayis. So Yom Kippur is 5 days prior to Sukkot, and we're saying that for the 7 days prior to Sukkot, they were busy with the Chanukas Abayis and eating and drinking, having a good time. So Memela that year, they actually did not celebrate, observe Yom Kippur. They were eating and drinking on Yom Kippur. And they were worried, and they were saying, maybe they're in big trouble. They mamish, right? They ate and drank on Yom Kippur. That's classically, that's like a big deal. So, okay, where am I? So Yotzu Sabaskov Amra, a heavenly voice emerged and said, Loim to them, not to worry, all of you are going to the world to come, are entering into the world to come, all good. So, so that year they did not observe Yom Kippur, and it was okay. My Darush, how do we know that from a pasuk that it was all good? So Amru, they said Kal v'chomer. I'm sorry, no, not from. But why did they assume that they were allowed to eat on Yom Kippur that year? So Amru Kal v'chomer. They said, well, it's logical. Uma mishkan shein kedushaso kedushas olam. If we take a look at the tabernacle, that the tabernacle was sort of a temporary holiness. V'korban yachid doche Shabbos. V'korban yachid, and it was individual sacrifices, right? If we take a look at the tabernacle, at the Chanukas HaMizbeach of the tabernacle of the Mishkan, So there were 12 Nesiim, and each one offered a korban every day. It was a korban yachid, it was an individual korban, and they would offer it every day by the Chanukah HaMizbeach, which after all was for the tabernacle, which is a temporary dwelling, and yet Doche Shabbos, this or Skila, and yet they were able to offer that korban even on Shabbos, and Shabbos is pretty significant in that you chayiv misa bidei misas bezdin, that if you violate Shabbos, we stone you, like the kind of stone you that gets you killed. And yet we're saying that they were able to offer those korbanos for the Chanukah HaMizbeach even on Shabbos. So Mikdash, so Memele, they figured when it comes to the Beis HaMikdash, the Kedushas Kedushas Olam, that its holiness is forever. Although interestingly, we had the Gemara in Masechta Megillah about Kedusha Rishona Kidsha L'Shaita. But anyways, I don't know. Maybe there's nafkaminas, maybe there isn't. I don't know. But Hakoponim, the Beis Hamikdash, which is sort of forever, the Korban Tzibor, and the offerings that they were offering were communal offerings, not individual offerings. V'Yom Kippurim the Anush Kares, and we're talking about Yom Kippur, where the punishment is Kares, which is not as severe as Skila. So Lo Kol Shekain, certainly then you should be able to be Doche Yom Kippur for the Chanukas Habayis, and that's why they ate and drank and enjoyed themselves on Yom Kippur that year. Ela Amai Ayu Doagim. So if that's the case, that they had sort of logic to support them, so what were they nervous about? So and for the Gemara, Hasum Tzorich Gavoa Hacha Tzorich Hedyot. Well, you could argue that maybe when it came to the tabernacle, the sacrifices were going to the Eibishter. They're going to God. And whereas over here, Tzorich Hedyot, right, the people were eating and drinking from eating these korbanos and drinking and enjoying themselves. So maybe so by the tabernacle, since they were going to God, but the sacrifices were for God, maybe that's why they were able to be Doche Shabbos. Hochanami mi'abed levdu mechelo nechlu v'lo lishtu. But affect the Gemara, okay, but did they have to eat over here by the Beis Hamikdash? Maybe on Yom Kippur what they should have done is they should have just offered the sacrifices, but not eaten and drinking. So ein simcha b'lo achila v'shtia, and for the Gemara that, well, it's only you can't really have happiness without eating and drinking. Interesting. And therefore, Memele, if they were going to be having a happy, joyous time during the Chanukah Habayis for 1 week before Sukkot, and that's going to sort of overlap with Yom Kippur, so they would be allowed to eat and drink, eat these korbanos and drink whatever they were drinking, in order to be happy during the Chanukah Habayis, and they made that kal v'chomer to assume that it was okay for them to eat and drink. Mishkan dedachi Shabbos min olam. In fact, the Gemara, how do we know that by the Mishkan, that by the tabernacle, when the 12 Nesiim, how do you define Nesiim? The leaders? I don't know. The Nesiim, those like leaders of the tribes, when they would offer their korbanos for the first 12 days of the month of Nisan. So how do we know that those 12 days even include Shabbos, and they would offer korbanos on Shabbos? If you're going to say, well, the pasuk says in the context of the korbanos of the Nisim, Bayom Arishon on the first day, Bayom Hashvi, and on the seventh day, assuming that the seventh day is Shabbos, that even on Shabbos, the Taka offered their korbanos. So Dilma Shvi the korbanos. But the Gemara suggests, well, maybe Bayom Hashvi in the context of the Nisim doesn't mean on Shabbos, it means on the seventh day of the korbanos. But Kilu, the seventh day of the korbanos may be taking into account the fact that they took a break for Shabbos. Kilu, maybe the sixth day of the korbanos was Friday, and what was the seventh day of the korbanos? Sunday. They skipped Shabbos. Maybe. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, she says, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, no, they even offered the korbanos of the Nisim on Shabbos because the pasuk says, B'yom Ashteyasar Yom. It says that on the 11th day, right, and who offered on the 11th day? Who could tell me? B'yom Ashteyasar Yom Naslav Ne Osher Pagil Ben Ochron. So it says Bayom Ashteyasar Yom. It says Yom, says day twice in that verse. So my Yom, and we learn out from the word Yom, day. My Yom Kula Ratzuf, just like a day it's all straight. There are no breaks and interruptions in the day. Af ashte also kula nutufim. So also the 11 days, right? We're saying that the Pagil ben Ochron offered his korban on the 11th day. So the 11th day without any interruptions, including Shabbos, there are no interruptions. V'duma yom ru'uyin ksiv. V'duma yom ru'uyin. Fact the Gemara. But still, maybe when it says, 11 days, it means 11 days that are fit, not necessarily 11 days in a row. But Shabbos, you wouldn't offer maybe. So, ksiv krach, we have another pasuk that says, b'yom shneimaso yom. That on the 12th day, and there as well, it says, yom, day, twice. Mayom kula ratzuf, shneimaso kula yom, kula nutzufin. So we want to suggest that just like we said a minute ago, that just like a day is continual without any breaks and any interruptions, so also all 12 days were without any breaks or interruptions. But then fact the Gemara, but maybe there as well, it's specifically days that, the days that you were able to offer, maybe not including Shabbos. Shabbos you wouldn't offer. So imken trei kroi lamali. The Gemara says, yeah, but come on, there are 2 psukim that have these extra yoms, these extra days. I mean, so even if you want to say that maybe one, if it would only be like, biyom ashti also yom, so maybe we want to say that that's maybe days that are fit. But then when the very next pasuk, or the next chapter, then says on the, v'yom shtei also yom, so then, v'yom shneim also yom, so then the fact that we have 2 psukim like this is teaching us that, it's even Doche Shabbos. Alright, to Mikdosh Doche Yom Kippur Minalan. And how do we know that the Korbanis of Chanukas Habayis were Doche Yom Kippur? So maybe you're going to say, well, it says V'yom, it says Arba also Yom. It says by the Chanukas Habayis 14 days, so maybe like the days are in a row. But but maybe when it's talking about those 14 days, it means the 14 days that were fit, but maybe not including Shabbos. So Gomer Yom Yom Mehasim says, yeah, but we learn a Gzeir Shava of Yom from the Mishkan. Just like by the Mishkan it says Yom, and it even includes Shabbos, so also by the Chanukah Sabayis it says Yom, and it even includes Shabbos. So now says the Gemara, Yotzusa Baskol v'Amr Loim Kulchim Muzmonin L'chaya Olam Haba. Right? So we said that a heavenly voice emerged and said that all of you are going to the world to come. Alright? Don't worry about the fact that you ate on and drank on Yom Kippur. So how do we know this? How do we know that the Eibishter was cool with it? So the Tani Tachlifa, that Tachlifa taught, B'yom Hashmini Shilach Esa'am, that on the 8th day, Shlomo HaMelech sent away the people, Vayvarchu es HaMelech, and they blessed the king, Vayelchu lo aleim, and they went to their tents, Smechim v'tuvei leiv, happy and with good spirits, with the good hearts, Al kol hatov asher asa Hashem, for all of the goodness that the Eibishter did, the David Avdo, to his servant David, Yisrael Amo, and to his nation Israel. Okay, now we're going to break into pieces the pasuk. The Oleim, that when it says that they went to their tents, Shalchu Matzu Nishem B'Taira, that they went to their tents and they found their wives were all pure and they were able to sleep with their wives. Smechim, they were happy. Shenenu Miziv Ashchina, that they enjoyed the radiance of the divine. That sounds very enjoyable to me. V'tuvei leiv, with good hearts. Shekol echad ve'echad nisa'ah be'ishto be'ben zocher. That everybody's wife became pregnant with a boy. Alright? Al kol hatova, for all the good, she'yatz sabasko v'amar loim, kulchem uzman l'chai olam haba. For all the good that the heavenly voice emerged and said that all of you are going to the world to come. L'David Avdo, l'Yisrael Amo, for David his servant and for Israel his nation, b'shlom l'Yisrael Amo, d'achar lehu avon Yom Kippurim. So I understand what goodness he did for the Yidden, right, for his nation Israel, because he forgave them for the sin of having eaten on Yom Kippur. L'David Avdo. But to his servant David, what did God do for his servant David? So I'm reviewed on Rab. It says reviewed in the name of Rab, B'shashabike Shlomo, Lachnis Aron LaMikdash, when Shlomo HaMelech wanted to bring the Aron, the ark, into the temple. Dovku shayrim zelazeh. The gates of the temple, they stuck to each other. Shlomo esim v'arba runanos v'loneno. Shlomo then proceeded to say 24 types of rejoicing to God. As Rashi points out, Rina, Trina, Tfila, Bakasha, all sorts of different ways of rejoicing and singing out to God. V'loneno. He wasn't answered. The gates remained shut. Pasach v'omar. Then Shlomo Melech said, Sushayim Mashechem v'gomer. Gates, open up, open up. V'lo nen, he wasn't answered. Came to Omar, Hashem Elokim. But then once he says, God, al toshev pnei mishichecha, do not turn back the face of your anointed one. Zocher l'chazdei David avdecha. Remember the kindness of David, your servant. Miyad nena. And then immediately, after mentioning King David, Shlomo HaMelech was answered, Ba'osasha, Nepchu, Pnesone, David, Keshule, Kedera. At that point, anybody who was sort of like, given a bad rap to David, because of what happened with Bathsheba, so they became very embarrassed, like the, kind of like the sides of a pot, I guess, become very hot and turn red. So these fellows became embarrassed, V'yadu, and Hakol, and everybody knew that God had forgiven David for that sin with Bathsheba. Rabbi Yonasan ben Amsoyai, Rabbi Yehuda ben Gerim. So Rabbi Yonasan ben Amsoyai and Rabbi Yehuda ben Gerim, Tanu Parshas Nedarim be Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. They learned Masechta Nedarim by Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. If termine be'urta. And they left Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai at night, and they, said, okay, thanks for everything, we're going home now. The tzafra hadur, we come after Emine. But then the next morning, they came back to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai and said goodbye to him again. Amrlu, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says to them, V'lav, if Terisu mini be'orta, didn't you already bid me farewell last night? So Amruleh, they said to him, Limadtenu Rabbeinu, you have taught us Talmud Shenifta Mirabo V'lon Ba'oso Hoyer, that if you have a student who has already bid his Rebbe goodbye, farewell, but the student ended up sleeping in that city that night, so he has to go back to his teacher the next day and bid farewell Nachamol a second time. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Bayom Hashmini, that on the 8th day, Shilach Esa'am, that it says in the pasuk that on the 8th day, Shlomo HaMelech sent away the nation. Now the 8th day is Shmini Atzeres, which is the 22nd day of Tishrei. Vayivarchus HaMelech, and they all blessed the king. Uchsiv, and the pasuk says, Uviyom Esem V'Shlosha L'Chodesh Hashvi Shilach Esa'am. And it also says that on the 23rd day, he sent away the nation. And alright, so it says that he sent them away on the 8th day of Sukkot, which is the 22nd, but also on the 23rd. So the Talmud Hanifta Mirabo of Lon Ba'osa Ha'ir. So rather we learn from here how come Shlomo Melech had to send them away twice, because we learn that if you have a student who had already bid his teacher farewell, but then ends up staying in the city for another night, then he's got to bid farewell a second time. Now, what's particularly interesting about this story is that Rabbi Yehuda ben Gerim, if you remember from Masechta Shabbos, and Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Beis, so there was that whole story with Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai that like Rabbi Yehuda was praising the Romans, and for that he became the Rosh HaMadabim B'chol Makom, always the first one to speak. Rabbi Yossi kept quiet and he was exiled to Tzipori. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, what are you talking about? The Romans are a bunch of nudniks, and then he had to go flee for his life. That was all because Yehuda ben Gerim sort of let the word out that this discussion happened. And then Shimon ben Yochai ultimately kills Yehuda ben Gerim. Anyways, but here, assuming that this is the same Yehuda ben Gerim, so Shimon ben Yochai says to his son, Shimon ben Yochai says to his son, B'nei Adam alalu anoshim shel tzureim, that these people, Rabbi Yehuda ben Gerim and Rabbi Yonasan ben Amsoyai, they are very, very stark mention. They're very, very good, holy people. Zil Gabeyon, go to them, to Livarchu, so that they should bless you. Also, Ashkochinu, Dikaramu Kroya Adode. So, Shimon ben Yochai's son found Rabbi Yehuda ben Gerim and Rabbi Yonasan ben Amsai that they were sort of, they were like analyzing psukim. Ksipalis maigal raglecha v'chodrachecha yikonu. Alright, which means to like, I don't know, like measure your ways, measure and be intentional about your ways, that if you have like different mitzvahs, and one is a greater mitzvah, one is like a lower mitzvah, a lesser mitzvah, so then choose the greater mitzvah. Uchsiv, and the pasuk also says Orachaim pentifales, but it also says that you should not measure these things. So kasha kan mitzvah she'efshel asos ha'idei acherim, kan mitzvah she'efshel asos ha'idei acherim. So it depends. If there's somebody who could do the smaller mitzvah, so let them do the smaller mitzvah and you do the bigger mitzvah. But if there's nobody else to do the mitzvah, so then, don't pick and choose. Whichever one is available for you to do, you should do. Hadar yazve v'kami barilu. They then ask the question, Ksiv yikari mipninim v'chafatzecha lo yishvu ba. That the pasuk says that Torah study is even more special than pearls. V'chol chafatzecha, and any of your desires lo yishvu ba, do not equate with it. Hachefte shamayim yishvu ba. But the sort of mitzvahs can equate with Talmud Torah, meaning if there's a mitzvah, if you have Torah to study, but there's also a mitzvah to be done, so, right, where am I? That the mitzvahs of God could be equal to Talmud Torah. i.e., if it's between studying Torah and doing a mitzvah, so do the mitzvah. Yet we have another pasuk that says, Kol chafatzim lo yishvu ba, that any desires are not equal to studying Torah. That even mitzvahs are not on the same time, are not on the same level of studying Torah. If they have the choice between studying Torah and doing a mitzvah, better to study Torah. So, and for the Gemara, so here as well, if there's somebody else who could do the mitzvah, so then study Torah. If there's nobody else who could do the mitzvah, so then do the mitzvah. Alright, sounds very nice. So then eventually, Rabbi Yehuda ben Gerim and Rabbi Yonasan ben Amsoyai, they say to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai's son, my boy Sochanu, what are you doing over here? He says to them, my father Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said, Zil Gabayu to Livarchuch, why don't you go to them so that they can bestow you with a blessing? Amrulei, so they said to him, alright, you want a blessing? Here's a blessing. May it be the will that you sow, but do not reap. That you go out with merchandise, but you're unable to, that you bring in merchandise, but you're unable to sell it. You go out to sell, but you don't come back with any profits or something. Your house should be destroyed and your inn should be settled. Your table should get all messed up and you shouldn't see a new year. Okie dokie. So now when he came to his father, Reb Shimon ben Yochai, so his father said, he said to his father, to Reb Shimon ben Yochai, what the heck happened? He says, not only did they not bless us, they gave us troubles. So Reb Shimon ben Yochai says, what did they say to you? So he says to his father, look, this is what they told me. So Reb Shimon ben Yochai says, no, these are all blessings. When they said you should sow but not reap, it means that you will have children and they won't die. Right, that you will bring in but not go out, that you will have merchandise but you will not be able to sell it. It means that you should bring your wife home with you, and your children should not die, because if they do die, then she might go back to her, leave you and go back to her father's house. So it's saying that, right, that you're going to have children and they're going to be healthy. Tepuk v'lo ta'ayil, when it says to go out but not bring in, so tolid bansa, that you will have a daughter, v'lo yamusu guvrayu, and their husbands will not die, v'lehadju levasach, which would then cause them to come back to you. But no, you're going to send them out, they're going to get married, they're going to have you're going to have einiklach, and they're going to all be healthy, nobody's going to come back to you. That your house should be destroyed and your inn should be settled. Well, this world is your inn, and next world is your house. The pasuk says, that your insides, your imaginations, is your house forever. Kirbam ella kvarim. That your graves, that the world to come is batemo, is your house. And therefore what he's saying is that you should have a long life, you shouldn't die young. That your table should get all messed up with sons and daughters, and you won't see another new year, that your wife will not die, which would force you to marry another woman. So basically, Reb Shimon ben Yochai demonstrated to his son how actually all of these things were big blessings. All right, that sounds very nice. Reb Shimon ben Chalafta iftarmine de Rebbe. So Reb Shimon ben Chalafta, he was bidding farewell to Rebbe. The Rebbe says to his son, go to Reb Shimon ben Chalafta so that he could bless you. Omarle, and Reb Shimon ben Chalafta says to Rebbe's son, may it be the will that you do not embarrass anybody else, and they in turn, and you in turn will not get embarrassed. So then when he went to his father Rebbe, so Rebbe says, no, so what did Reb Shimon ben Chalafta say to you? He says, what did he say? Nothing so crazy. Don't embarrass anybody. You won't get embarrassed. Omarle. So Rebbe says to his son, wow, gewaldig. Berchech birchesa de berchen kutshu birchu li Yisrael. That Shimon ben Chalafta blessed you with the blessing that the Eibishter blessed the Yidden, vitanaba, and then doubled it, repeated it. The Chsiv is the pasuk says, v'achatem ochel v'savoa, that you'll eat and be satisfied, v'ilaltem v'gomer v'leivoshu ami le'olam. Right, and you'll praise God, and my nation will not be embarrassed forever. Vidatem kivukar v'yisrael ani v'gomer, and you will know that I am among the Yidden, v'leivoshu ami le'olam, and my nation will not be embarrassed ever. So we see that the Eibishter blessed the Yidden that they shouldn't be embarrassed, and he doubled it. So it's a very special thing to be blessed, not to embarrass and not to be embarrassed. Alright. Alright, so getting back to the Mishnah had said that a fellow's wife is permitted to sort of organize her jewelry on, and put on her jewelry, adorn her jewelry on Chol HaMoed. Tanu Rabbanan de Rabbi Elu Tachshite Noshim. These are the adornments of women. Kocheles, I don't know, eyeliner or something to do with the eyes. Ufokeses, I think something to do with combing hair. Umavir Srak al Panel, and she can put some kind of makeup or something. Is there anything else you put on your face? Is that called makeup? Or maybe there's something else, I don't know. Stuff you put on your face that makes you look good, I guess. Sounds good to me. That those who say ma'aver sak al panei shamata. Okay, that those who say that it means something to remove pubic hairs. All right. The bisud Rav Chizda mikashta ba'anpei kalsa. So Rav Chizda's wife was putting on jewelry and was then by her daughter-in-law. I guess Rav Chizda and his wife's daughter-in-law. All right. So Yosef Afuna by Chinna kamid Rav Chizda v'Yosef v'Kamar. So Afuna bar Chilna was there with Rav Chizda, and he said, Lo shanu ela yalda. So he said, 1 second, when it says that women could put on makeup and jewelry on Chol HaMoed, so that's a young woman who I guess enjoys doing these things. Havazakena lo, but it doesn't apply to older women. Omar lehu Elohim. So Rav Chizda says, what are you talking about? Hafilu imach, even your mother. Vafilu imad imach, even your grandmother. Alright. Vafilo omedes al kivra, even if a woman is standing about to go into her grave forever, she's gonna, at the end of her life, because people say, Bashisin kavashis, the kaltav lo ruato, that a fellow who's 60, just like a fellow who's 6, to sort of the sound of music, they run, i.e., to certain things that people enjoy, they will always enjoy, no matter their age, and therefore, my wife is allowed to put on jewelry and things on Chol Moed because she enjoys it. Rabbi Yehuda Omer lo sasud. Rabbi Yehuda says that she should not put on the things to things like apply things to her skin. I guess things like clays and things. Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Isha lo sasud. A woman shouldn't put on these like I think things like lime or clay, something like that. Because I guess it's not pleasant at the time that you apply whatever this thing is. Umod Rabbi Yehuda besid, but Rabbi Yehuda would agree though that when it comes to besid sheichol lekaplo b'moed, that if there's some kind of thing that you would apply to your skin that you could also remove it on the festival, shetofalto b'moed, well in that case you'd be allowed to apply it on the festival, shafalpi shemitzera hi achshav, that even though at the time that you're applying it to your skin, maybe it's uncomfortable and not pleasant, smecha la'achar zman, she will enjoy it ultimately over time on the festival, so therefore it would be okay. But does Rabbi Yehuda really hold of this logic that even though something may be unpleasant right now, it would be okay over time and therefore it's permitted? But we learn in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda that Rabbi Yehuda says that on sort of a festival of the idol worshippers, of the pagans, so you cannot be paid back. Rabbi Yehuda says that on their festivals, so you can get paid back by them, they could pay you back because it's sort of not pleasant for them. Meaning, on the pagan festivals, we don't want to buy things from them. We don't want to do anything that would cause them to like thank their getchkes, their avodah zars. However, says Rabbi Yehuda, you can get paid back by them because they're not going to thank their getchkes for that, because it's not, people don't enjoy paying other people back, and therefore it would be acceptable to receive payment from a pagan on their festival. Amrulos, they said to Rabbi Yehuda, so they said to Rabbi Yehuda, but even though maybe it's uncomfortable for them now that they have to pay you back, but ultimately they're going to be happy in that they got it off their plate, right? They already paid you back. So in that sense, they're going to be happy over time. But Rabbi Yehuda doesn't seem to be, taking that into account. And therefore, if Rabbi Yehuda is not taking that into account when it comes to being paid back by the pagans, so then why all of a sudden is he saying that, well, you're allowed to put on this, plaster or whatever on your skin as long as you take it off, because even though right now it's problematic, it's uncomfortable, but ultimately it's going to make you happy. But by the pagans, he doesn't seem to be caring about what ultimately is going to happen. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok, says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok, Hanach lehilchos Moed. Don't ask kashas from the halachas of Chol Moed. The chulu meitzer achshav v'sameach lachar zman ninu. Because everything when it comes to Chol Moed that you're allowed to do is an inyan of something that you might not enjoy right now, but ultimately you're going to enjoy. Rashi gives an example of like cooking, for example. You might not enjoy cooking, but ultimately you're going to enjoy eating. But then ultimately, you're not going to enjoy washing the dishes. But we're not getting that far, I guess. Ravina Amar says, Nachri linin peira and the olametzer. So Ravina wants to say, no, there's no such thing, right? Rabbi Yehuda disagrees and says they're not going to be happy ultimately. That these pagan people, they're never going to be happy when it comes to paying back. All right. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, if you have Jewish girls that already have reached puberty and that they have 2 pubic hairs, however, they're not yet 12 years old. Anios toflos osun basid. So the poor girls would remove the hair with lime. Ashiros toflos osun basolis. Wealthy girls would remove the hair with fine flour. Pnos Melachim b'Shemen Amor, and the daughters of kings, they would use myrrh oil. Shnema, as the pasuk says by Esther Amalka, Shisha Chodashim Shemen Amor, that she was 6 months in myrrh oil. My Shemen Amor, what's Shemen Amor? Rav Huna bar Chia Amar Satchas. Says Rav Huna bar Chia, it's Satchas. Rav Yirmiyah bar Ami Amar Shemen Zayish Levi Shlish. So Rav Yirmiyah bar Ami says it's olive oil that has from olives that haven't reached a third of their growth yet. Tanya, we talk a little in the Brisa. Rav Yehuda Omer says Rav Yehuda Ampikinon. What's Ampikinon? Shemen Zayish Levi Shlish. It's olive oil that hasn't yet reached a third of its growth, of its development. Also, how come you apply it to your skin? Shemeshus asayir me'adin esabasur, that it removes hair and it makes your flesh very nice. Rav Bevai hava le barto. Rav Bevai had a daughter. All right. Tafla aver. She applied. I think the point is that she applied this like oil, one limb at a. He applied this oil to her one limb at a time. Shakol ba dalad me'azuze, and for her he got 400 zuz. I guess that was a very nice dowry. I think that we once learned, or twice learned even, about Rav Bevai bar Abai, that, I don't know if it's Rav Bevai bar Abai, maybe, but Rav Bevai was very, very poor. I forgot. I have to remember. We saw it, I think, Masechta Shkolim and Masechta Yoma, I think, by Rav Bevai. Is very poor. There was some kind of nafkamina there. Now I can't remember. But anyways, but he had his daughter, and he applied oil to her, and he got a very nice dowry. And there was he had a neighbor who was Gentile, and he also had a daughter, and he applied this oil to his daughter, but all at once. And she perished. Omar, and the fellow said, that Bevai killed my daughter. Okay. Doesn't sound like a good situation. Omar Rav Nachum says, Rav Bevai deshasi shichra, or Rav Bevai, he drank beer, that's why his daughter needed to remove the hair from her body. She had a lot of hair because he drank beer. Rav Nachman says, we don't drink beer, so our daughters don't need to remove hair from their bodies. Okay, what do you want me to tell you? Rav Nachman, there was a wine, he liked to drink wine, I believe. So the Gemara where is the Gemara? In Eruvin? That says Rav Nachman, he can't wake up unless he drinks a revius of wine. Okay, I drink a revius of coffee. Sometimes more than a revius. Often more than a revius. Friends, that was Daf Tes of Masechta Moed Katan. Very interesting daf, in my opinion. We learned about Ein Marvin Simcha B'Simcha, that we learned now from Shlomo HaMelech. And how they didn't, right, how he kept separate the Chanukas Habayis and the Sukkot that year. We also learned about the heavenly voice that said it was okay that they ate on Yom Kippur that year when they were doing the Chanukas Habayis. We saw interesting agaritas about different rabbis who were leaving Tanoim, like Reb Shimon ben Yochai and Rebbe, and they gave blessings to their children. All right, and okay, we just kind of continued going on in the Mishnah that women are allowed to put on jewelry and things on Chol HaMoed. And other interesting things, friends. That was Daf Tes, Daf 9 of Masechta Moed Katan. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.